Hey, we're on. What is going on, everybody? And thank you for joining us once again on another round. Episode 5. We got 5 of these in already. It seems like it's gone by pretty quick that this is our 5th episode. So joining us tonight, we have a few of the regular friends. We're missing a couple heads tonight, so it'll just be 4 of us. But let's start with introducing everybody. As always, I'm John. This is Blind Whiskey Reviews. You guys all know that because you came to my channel. But let's jump to Kyle. Kyle, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, everyone? Kyle with Bourbon Blind.
Jason.
What's up, everybody? It's Jason C from the Match and Drum. Thanks for hosting, John. For another round with you guys. Always enjoy these. Thanks for having me on, man.
No problem, buddy. And Scott.
Yeah, Scott here, one half of the Scotch Test Dummies. Bart is AWOL again, so I'm filling the gaps, you'd say.
Are we ever going to get Bart on here? Is there ever going to be a week he pops in?
Yeah, there's 1 in a million.
Well, that means there's a chance.
You're telling me there's
a chance.
Telling me Samsonite.
So let's start off with, as always, with what we're drinking. Right now, I wanted to start off with a little bit of a lighter budget pour. So we're starting off with the Old Forester Rye, which for me is a fantastic budget whiskey. So what are you drinking, Kyle?
I went and grabbed a bunch of store picks. So this is actually one from Bourbon Pursuit that I went on the pick on. So it's a 12-year Elijah Craig barrel. It's delicious.
Awesome. What do you got, Jason?
I'm drinking the first release from Bardstown Bourbon Company, the Fusion Series 1. I just reviewed this stuff, and I freaking love it. It's got an 11-year, 7-month-old Kentucky bourbon in here. It's got a 2-year, 3-month rye bourbon and a 2-year, 1-month. 2-year, 1-month rye bourbon and a 2-year, 3-month wheated bourbon all blended together. It's a beautiful marriage of some really great quality bourbon. So just a really great release. I love it.
Nice. What about you, Scott?
We were talking beforehand, and I think you said something about rare breed, and I was like, well, I got Kentucky Spirit, so I grabbed it. It's the newer bottling. And I think we got one of the off single barrels. It's not that great. It's not bad. It's just not as good as I'd heard.
I've never found Kentucky Spirit to be a mind blower. It's always solid bourbon, but it's never been a crazy whiskey in my experience anyway.
Yeah, I reviewed it about a month ago, and I even said on the review that it's kind of in this weird area between, I think Wild Turkey is kind of a victim of its own success with so many good premium bottles they offer between 101 Russell's Reserve single barrel, Russell's Reserve 10, and the rare breed. Then you have Kentucky Spirit, that's just basically a single barrel 101, and it's a little bit of a higher price point now. I just don't see where it fits, and I'd rather have rare breed or Russell's Reserve than the Kentucky Spirit.
A little bit of a higher price point. I think I paid $60 for this thing.
Yeah, and
over 101.
Yeah, and everyone thought that it was going to be a cheaper bottling because they got away from the turkey feather bottle, and they're basically using the rare breed bottle. So they thought there was going to be maybe a cost savings there, but apparently not.
Yeah, it'd be really nice if they were like honey barrels of 101, but it just seems like they're kind of hit or miss.
Yeah.
Like I say, this one isn't. It's not bad. It's not a bad whiskey, but it's just not. I definitely would not buy it again unless I start hearing that the quality has improved to justify that price. That's for sure.
Yeah, I said that too. Unless I know I'm drinking something from like an amazing honey barrel, I probably most likely wouldn't spend $60 again. I'd probably rather buy a bottle of Russell's Reserve for like 45.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, why don't we kick it off with our first topic of the night? And let's start with a little bit of whiskey news with a couple of new releases that came out, I think, in the last week or so. So there was the announcement that the Heaven Hill Bottled and Bond is being re-released and rebranded and repackaged. So that's coming out. And also the 1792 12-year got announced, which is supposed to actually be coming out at a reasonable price. I heard that's supposed to be released at around a $50 price point, which isn't incredibly crazy. So I wouldn't call it excited, but I was glad to hear they weren't really trying to get after you on the price point. Although it's only like a 96 proof whiskey, I think. So maybe not necessarily the finest value, but let's start with the Heaven Hill Bottled and Bond. So, this whiskey got discontinued, 6-8 months ago. Kyle was kind enough to help me get a handle on this bottle. And Kyle, what'd you pay for these bottles? Were they like probably $15 with tax, something like
13,
that.
$15, something like that. Yeah.
So we got a very, very much a budget bourbon at 100 proof with a 6-year age statement on it. And now it's being rebranded and re-put out as a 7-year bottled and bond whiskey at the grand old price of $40, which is, round about triple the price that it was before. So let's start with Kyle. Kyle, is 1 extra year of age worth triple the price?
Short answer, no. Is that going to stop me from buying one? Also, no. So, I mean, you got to find out if it's worth it or not. I mean, it's really easy to say, yes, it is, or no, it's not. But I mean, I'm going to get another one of my bottles of the 6-year and get one of those of the 7-year. Hopefully someone I know in California can hook me up with one, and try them back to back and see if it's worth it. If the juice is worth the squeeze, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably all in the same boat that we're all going to be purchasing a bottle. I mean, not that $40 is some outrageous price for a bottle of whiskey, but it's always tough when that bottle of whiskey was out, 6 months ago at a third of the price. But what do you guys think? Jason, you got anything on this?
Yeah, I actually have some deep-rooted thoughts on this one. I agree with Kyle as far as the price point. No matter what it is, we're going to get it. And I purposely saved some bottles of Heaven Hill Bottled and Bond, the old one, just to hopefully compare to it. I get what they're trying to do as a business. I understand the value of aging it one more year, upcharging it since the last bottle was so cheap. What bothers me about it is the availability of it. Because this was kind of a cult following bourbon that was only available in Kentucky. And if you see the first releases of it, it's not even going to be in Kentucky, which I think is kind of crazy. You're taking that bottle that everyone coveted, people would go to Kentucky for and want it and have it. And the first releases of it, the first kind of distribution model of it, it's not even going to release in Kentucky first, which I just think is kind of bizarre. So I thought they could have been a hero and kind of maybe gave it to their Kentucky, kind of keep it local, and then kind of spread it out after that. But they're just kind of completely avoiding Kentucky altogether in the beginning, which I kind of think is it's ballsy, but it's going to work because people are going to go crazy. I mean, we already have got you guys planning. Kyle's going to have John send him a bottle when he could get one, since California is one of the first states. So is New York. So I'm going to use my contacts in New York to try to get one. So we're all going to go crazy for it, but I just think it was a little bit weird that Kentucky's being left out.
I mean, it's kind of like a slap in the face to all the Kentucky people, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
Yeah, agreed. So I don't think we got a ton more to say about the bottled and bond at this point. We'll have to just wait and see. We're all going to buy a bottle. I'm pretty certain of that. So we'll be.
Let's point this out though. So a lot of people though, even when this was readily available, people would trip to Kentucky and buy it by the case, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is anybody going to go buy a case of the 7-year-old in the same circumstances?
I would doubt it, because I think the reason people bought it by the case was it was such a good value, and when the value is gone, or maybe it's still a good whiskey and maybe it's worth $40, but I don't think anybody's going to be, jumping out to go grab it for the $40 price point, or traveling far to go get it, because it's just not worth it, I would imagine.
Yeah, and so we're in Kansas, and both of our bottles are from Kentucky, people that went there and brought them back for us. So that would be the same with the 7-year. I doubt we see it here, but
I would imagine if it's popular, it ends up getting nationwide distribution at some point. Who knows how long it's going to take them to get there? But if people are willing to pay $40 and they don't have a problem offloading the stuff, I would imagine it's going to run across the states here.
Yeah, Dark Meat Chicken in the chat said, "Why is this new 7-year-old going to be more than Mckenna 10 single barrel?" I think just because really, Mckenna is kind of hard to find for that MSRP anymore. You get it some places for that $35 to $40, but I mean, I saw it for $55, $60 at the distillery.
Yeah, but keep in mind though too, Mckenna 10 is changing from a single barrel to a batch release.
Exactly.
And it's going up $10 at retail, and it's going to be $45. So yeah, it's actually going to be a little bit more.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know if any of the viewers have heard that too. Mckenna, that's a good point, Scott. Mckenna is moving to a small batch bourbon, apparently, from what has been said by the new master distiller. He says that they have enough stock to small batch it to make it more consistent rather than a single barrel. I don't get that. I don't understand that either, but apparently that's what's happening. Maybe this new bottle and bond is going to be their next bourbon to be the big award winner. I don't know what they have in mind, but we'll see.
I mean, I don't mind them doing that move with Mckenna only because I've had such inconsistency with Mckenna over the last couple of years. I'd rather they batch it and do a better job with quality control and make sure that the stuff tastes good, because even at $30 a bottle, it's still upsetting when you get a bottle that doesn't taste good. And while we're on the topic of Heaven Hill and their customer service, so when I reviewed Mckenna, I've reviewed it twice. I reviewed 2 separate bottles that actually happened to be bottled on the same day or barreled on the same day. The whiskey was made the same day, and both of them tasted terrible. And so after I did the second review, I reached out to Heaven Hill and I got a response pretty quickly, and I've been going back and forth with them for a few weeks. And then all of a sudden they dropped off the face of the planet. I can't get a hold of the person that was talking to me. I've tried reaching out again through their general email number. Nobody responds. So I am pretty disappointed with the customer service over at Heaven Hill. So I doubt any of them are going to see this, but if you happen to, definitely try to get back to me, because it's super annoying that, I had the same experience with Jim Beam, and they were super responsive and took care of the problem, and I was really impressed with their customer service. And I am super bummed that Heaven Hill, which is one of my favorite distilleries out of the big boys, isn't backing up their product. So that's rather upsetting.
What did you get out of them before they went dark, basically? I mean, did you get any kind of
I mean, it was just at the point that they went dark on me. I was getting a response from them. We were going back and forth a little bit. They requested some information, which I quickly provided. The last thing they left off was that they were going to go to their tasting team and take their samples that they had of those batches, evaluate them, and get back to me. And at that point, I've never heard back from them since. And I can't get a response out of anybody over there. So it's like I said, I'm not asking for them to necessarily replace the whiskey or do anything of that nature, but a response would be nice, like not just ignoring me would be nice.
Now, when you said you had 2 bottles and they were both terrible.
Yeah, they were both pretty rough.
Really?
And strangely, I didn't buy them at the same place. They were both different barrels, but they were both distilled the same day, barreled the same day. So maybe something was wrong with the whiskey that got distilled that day. I don't know.
I'm wondering, John, if it's your email that made them decide to go to a small batch. That's probably what it was. It's probably all
they're probably like, yeah. I mean, we don't want to keep getting these complaints from this asshole. Let's change it.
Let's small batch it so we don't run into this anymore.
All right, enough of my soapbox. Let's move on to the 1792 12 year. Is this a release you guys are excited for? Do you care? What are your thoughts? Let's start with Scott this time.
Yeah, definitely. And I was hoping, I didn't know what the price point was going to be. We were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and I said, hopefully it's still, 1792 and Barton are known to be, reasonable, all the different offerings that they have. And so I was like, I hope when the 12 year comes out, it's at least reasonably priced, $50 to $60 range, hopefully not much more than that if it is. And I think that's where, did we say that's where it's coming in at, is about 50, 55?
Yeah, I think the MSRP on it's supposed to be $50.
Yeah. Now, and I think I like the 12 to 15 year range on bourbons. A lot of people think that's too old and they like the 8 to 9 year range, but I like that 12 to 15 year range. So I'd be looking forward to that 1792. I'll definitely pick a bottle of it up. So,
yeah, I think the Knob Creek single barrel picks that are 14 and 15 years old would beg to differ to anybody that thinks that 15 or 14-year-old bourbon isn't any good, because those things are killer. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm actually really looking forward to it. 1792 is one of those bourbons I haven't really gotten along with very well over the course of time. I've had a couple of really good bottles, but for whatever reason, Barton to me drinks a lot hotter than it actually is. But I am really looking forward to the 12 year. I definitely, just like Scott, I like that 10 to 15 year range for bourbons. I think it you get some really good flavor profiles in that age range. Not to say like a 6, 7, 8 year olds are good too, because there are some really stellar ones out there. But I really feel like, the beauty of a bourbon, you get some of those more of a little bit of an oaky flavor profile really comes through, a little bit older. But yeah, I would agree with you too, John. Some of those Knob Creeks, those 14, 15 year olds are absolutely delicious. So Yeah, if Barton can keep that price about $50 for a 12-year bourbon, sign me up tonight. Right now.
Yeah, and you know, I think it'll do 1792 good to have a little bit more age on it, because in my experience, 1792, I don't love what they put out for the most part. I really enjoy the single barrel foolproof bottlings that I've been able to try. But aside from that, I tend to find their whiskey to be a little sweet. And I'm really hoping that some of that age will add a little bit of that, you know, oak tannin to it, a little bit of bitterness, and help balance out a little bit of that sweetness and make it a little bit more of a balanced whiskey. Not that I have a problem with the price point to an extent, but it's hard. Again, my like benchmark, and we've talked about this on other live streams, the benchmark is always Elijah Craig. And so a 12-year, you know, foolproof whiskey for $60 makes it hard to really want to pay $50 for a, you know, 90. I think it's supposed to be like 96 proof or something in that range. So it's kind of the benchmark. I'll be buying a bottle for sure, and we'll see where it's at. But
we'll look at you know, Weller 12 used to be everywhere. It's a $35-$40 bottle. You're lucky if you get it for that now, basically. Very good. When you have this next to just the green label, the special reserve, the age shows, you know, the depth shows that extra time that it's spent in the barrel. I love it, and I like to see more 12-year-old statements.
I will too. And actually, brings me to one more release, and we'll let maybe Kyle chime in on this one. But I think they just talked about that Knob Creek is getting its 9-year age statement back. So Kyle, what are we thinking about that one?
Real quick on the 1792, it did say that it is a limited release, but they are gonna do it every summer. So I think that's awesome. And the Knob Creek, I think that's awesome. It's been like 3 years since it's had its age statement, and I've kind of been wondering about it because a lot of the picks coming out lately are in that like 14 to 15 year range. So I've kind of been thinking, I was like, man, obviously they got some sort of stock built up. You know what I mean? Where, you know, obviously they do a lot less single barrels than they do of just the regular Knob Creek 100 proof that, you know, everyone buys. But yeah, I'm excited. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into one of our other topics, which is, you know, obviously bourbon's gotten incredibly popular over the last 4 to 5 years. And so because of this, all these big distilleries made massive changes to their infrastructure and the size of their distilleries and their ability to warehouse whiskey and how much whiskey they can hold on to. So a lot of them have doubled and tripled their capacities for whiskey so that they could keep up with this demand in the market. So I just kind of want to get your guys' feel on, do you think that these whiskey or these distilleries have kind of overshot what the anticipated, you know, demand for this whiskey was going to be? Or do you think they're on par? Are we behind? Because it seems to me like we're getting a few more whiskeys out with age statements, like with Knob Creek, which would suggest that they've got more aged whiskey than they need, you know? So are we looking at getting some better aged whiskeys out here, and maybe having a surplus of bourbon and maybe seeing a drop off in some of these prices at some point here in the near future?
Let's hope that they overshot. I said, let's hope that they overshot.
Well, of course, we're all hoping. I don't think we need to go there.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, if we had that crystal ball and could tell, you know, I think when I look at it, the only thing that's going to stop the growth, the expansion, is going to be a financial crisis again, where people have to cut back on spending. Monthly budgets are cut and whatnot, and the whiskey is gonna, you know, it's a luxury. It's gonna take a hit, and people are gonna stop buying. So as long as I think as we can avoid a financial crisis, you know, with the markets and people's retirement stuff like that, it'll continue to grow.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you to an extent. I kind of feel, and this is pure speculation and just feeling on my part, but I kind of feel like they've overshot a little bit on what they anticipated the desire and demand for this whiskey is going to be. And I don't think we're going to see the results of that now, but, you know, come 5 years from now, like I said, a lot of these big distilleries doubled and tripled their capacities. And I don't get the impression that whiskey has increased its popularity that much to where they're not going to be sitting on a surplus of whiskey at some point in the relatively near future. So I don't know. That's just a feeling, and I hope it's true, but we'll see.
I think I'm with you. Like I said, we all hope that they overshot it, and like you said, we're seeing more products, more labels, more age statements, more of that kind of stuff, even from the same distilleries, not even counting the craft distilleries that are out there. And obviously the craft distilleries are going to take up some portion of the market from at least the enthusiast standpoint. You know what I mean? Someone that goes and just buys Fireball is still going to just go buy Fireball. Like that doesn't change. But the enthusiast market is what has really gained in popularity. And I really hope that, like you say, we're starting to see that even out. I don't think it's going to do anything to the secondary market. I think they're still going to be crazy, but hopefully things will be more available.
Yeah, I think with the amount of bourbon that's being aged, you see all the distilleries building new warehouses all over the place and expanding productivity to age and to get bourbon in the barrels faster. I think what you have is an opportunity for these distilleries to kind of play to the market, just like Kyle said, the kind of the whiskey and bourbon enthusiasts where people were complaining that their age statements were going away, and now they're going to be bringing them back. Maybe that's something they're thinking about. Okay, we have all this overage stuff. Let's do something a little different. Let's bring an age statement back. Let's change this from a single barrel to a small batch, make it more consistent. Baker's is another bourbon that Beam is changing to a single barrel now, which I thought was interesting. So, and I think that's kind of an interesting shift in philosophy there, because Baker's was always kind of this in-between bourbon, which somewhere between Booker's and Knob Creek. It was still kind of pricey, but maybe they're trying to make it a little bit more of an exclusive offering now, being a single barrel, getting some better flavors out of it. So it's interesting what the distillers are doing productivity-wise and what they're doing with their bottles. But right now, I think the only thing that could really kill the kind of the bourbon boom right now is Fred Minnick wrote an interesting article about a few different things that can kill it. He mentioned these new bars that are popping up without alcohol that the hipsters are creating now. It's like
new what?
Yeah, it's
bar.
It's basically a bar, but without alcohol. I forgot. There's a certain name for them. So it has to do with this trend of millennials and new millennials, whatever the hell the next generation is, coming in and trying to and using data as a way to say that drinking alcohol is bad for you, basically, and it's not healthy. So let's have a bar where we can all go together, meet up, but instead of having alcohol there, I don't know, they're going to drink Ocean Spray. I don't know what they're going to drink.
So play hipsters. You have beards and man buns, play Fortnite, and throw axes.
Exactly. So that's the next wave of bars if that takes off, and who knows? And I know he also mentioned the CBD oil and the kind of the marijuana business, and if it gets kind of brought to the forefront as more of a state to state level, if it gets federally legalized, does that become the go-to instead of whiskey? I don't know. It was a cool kind of a speculative article, but interesting points.
I don't know if any of you guys caught the live stream that they did with the guy from Colorado, the big CBD and THC guy, and also the was like the board of bourbon, whiskey, spirits director, whoever. And the basically said that there's no correlation between the legalization of weed and like the amount of alcohol that people are buying. Like when they legalized it, people didn't change how much they were buying. And what was the other point you were talking about, Jason, with the that could kill it?
The hipsters and their alcoholless bars.
Yeah, I read a couple articles on that, and I've seen them popping up, especially in like bigger cities and stuff. And first of all, I mean, I have to laugh at them, but honestly, I don't see that catching on.
I don't see it catching on either, but I just think it's
like vegan restaurants. Are you going to have some? Sure. You know what I mean? Like it caters to a specific group of people, but do I see it overtaking your local dive bar anytime soon? I don't.
Yeah, I just want to kind of walk by one of those places with a whiskey bottle in my hand and like finish it, chug it, and just smash it on the floor and then run away.
I don't think that the alcoholless bar is going to catch on. I think that one's going to go by the wayside. But I do think there is some merit to the fact that whatever the hipsters end up doing, is kind of where trends end up going. And I think the hipsters were partially responsible for the bourbon boom. I mean, when bourbon became popular, that was kind of a driving force behind it, is that, it kind of skipped a generation and people started getting back into bourbon again when it was kind of like their grandfather's drink. So, and there was kind of really a push by this young generation of young individuals.
That's what was so interesting about the article. You think that the hipsters kind of got into bourbon all of a sudden, and the bartenders were a huge part of bringing bourbon back. You kind of, now we're going to take those out and just have bars now without alcohol. I don't really see it. I don't see it happening.
That's kind of one of the things I was like, basically like you and John said, like, aren't they kind of like partly responsible for this big boom? Like,
that's why I think it's the after millennials. I don't know what you call them. I think there's another. I should know this because I'm in marketing and I can't remember what the hell that group is named right now. But
look, even the tail end of millennials in this next group that's coming along, they're in that hipster range of people that are really going to drive the popularity of certain things, and they have a short attention span. These people can't do anything for more than a month or two at a time. So it creates a problem for creating trends with anything, but it's definitely going to drive the market in different directions for sure.
Yeah, but it's always going to be the whiskey, the enthusiasts, and the guys like us that stabilize the market. So
yeah, definitely. But you know what? One thing I've always kind of questioned is really how popular is whiskey? Because to some extent, you see these rare bottles and limited releases, and some of these releases are limited to sub 10,000 bottles. A 5,000 bottle release. Yet a year later, those bottles are still sitting on the shelf in a country with 300+ million people, or in a state with over 30 million people. It's like there's a lot of people in this country that are not drinking whiskey. So how popular really is whiskey? I mean, I know like the budget lines of whiskey are obviously very popular because there's a certain line of people that are going to want to drink whiskey, but they're not going to pay the exorbitant prices for, higher end whiskeys. But like, how popular is it really? I mean, I don't know that we're ever going to have an answer to that question, but
more popular than it was 10 years ago.
That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I actually go back even a little bit further. I think everybody, younger people, hipsters, I think it started with the craft beers. People started looking for more in their beer. They didn't want just Coors Light or Bud Light. And we saw the rise in the craft breweries and the ales and the stouts. And I think that's kind of I think that also helped lead into an exploration for people into whiskeys and into bourbons. And I think that's helped cause some of the boom as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Scott. I equated this whole bourbon boom, and as you're seeing with all the distilleries and the craft distilleries popping up all over the place making whiskeys, and I definitely will compare it to what happened with the beer boom, if you want to call it, 12, 15 years ago, when all of a sudden, Bud Light went out of fashion, and now stouts and peanut butter stouts and grapefruit,
Ooh, a sour ale. I like a sour ale.
All started, all these new new breweries started popping up and making these craft beers, and kind of the same thing has happened with whiskey now. And I'm wondering if it's what's going to happen, because some of those beer breweries, some of them have closed because so many came up. It was hard for them to make headway. Some of them have been sustainable and have, made really great beers and made a lot of money. But I'm wondering if some of as we get a little bit further into this, some of the distilleries that have gotten to the craft business will start kind of dying out a little bit, with not only more of these distilleries being built, but also even the big boys starting to cater to the whiskey geeks of the world.
Well, I mean, and that's why they
definitely
keep coming out
will.
with new labels. You know what I mean? But like I said, like the stayers are going to be people like High West and New Riff, and you know what I mean? People that have made a name for themselves and, got, a market. But yeah, just like craft beer. I mean, there's literally hundreds of distilleries that we've probably never even heard of. You know what I mean? And like, we're always on the forefront of everything that's happening. And, there's all these people that we've never heard of and may never hear of ever again.
I mean, I can tell you, I was into craft beer for a very long time, and I watched that whole kind of transition happen to all this boom of craft beer breweries, and then what ended up happening. A lot of them did close down. I definitely think we're going to see some of that with these craft distilleries. And because, I mean, think about it, this is whiskey is a terrible business venture when you really look at it. You know, you've got to sit on product for so long before you can even make a penny. And a lot of these distilleries are doing themselves a disservice, putting out young whiskey that tastes absolutely god awful. So like a person like me or any other enthusiast about whiskey is not going to go back. So they're creating a terrible name for themselves, ruining their reputation with customers. So there definitely is going to be a lot of closed distilleries, I would say, in the next couple of years. But I would be curious to see, because a big thing that happened in the craft beer world was that the big craft beer breweries like Anheuser-Busch and Miller started buying up a lot of the small craft breweries because they wanted their name and they wanted to turn them into a different, make them part of their portfolio. And I'm very curious to see if that starts happening with some of these large corporations that own the big distilleries. If they start taking over some of these guys.
Oh yeah, I think we've already seen that starting to happen.
We've seen a little bit of it, but I'm really in beer. It's super prevalent. Like a very large percentage of popular and successful craft breweries got bought up, and it's nowhere near distillery. That happening in the distillery world is nowhere near what happened in beer. But I really think we're going to see it going really hard in that direction.
I was just going to add real quick too to your. Sorry, Kyle, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think just, it takes so long to age it that it's just a longer process in general. But what were you saying, Scott?
Adding to that is that you distill your spirit, you age it for 5 years, and you're ready to bottle it. That still doesn't mean it's going to be good. You go back to that first day of distillation, and you have to start with good product. You have to start with good grain. You have to start with good water and good wood as well. If any of that's off, if you got a bad whiskey, good wood ain't going to fix it. And, same, if you've got a good whiskey, bad wood can make it go bad, go the other direction. So you've got all those components, all your components have to be good. So it's not just time that's going to do it as far as your business venture goes. You got to have your ducks in a row to get there. So
bad wood always makes it go in the other direction. That's a certainty.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what she said.
Especially with
I was trying to set one of you up. I'm glad you did.
Hudson Baby got bought out by William Grant. I think didn't High West get bought out in the last year or so?
A couple of years ago for an ungodly amount of money.
Nelson's Greenbrier, which makes Bell Mead, they just got bought out here in the last couple months. There's been a lot of movement in some of the, but again, those are your more prevalent distilleries. You know what I mean? And I hate to I love Bell Mead and Nelson's Greenbrier. I think they put out some awesome product, but at the same time, if I was them, when someone walked up to me with a big fat check, sure, dude, here's the keys. You know what I mean? That's hard to say no to.
It is, because when these big distilleries or big corporations come in with all this money, look at, if you look at beer, like Ballast Point got bought out for $1 billion. How do you say no to that? I don't think that anybody is.
Did they?
You take that money, you can go start up a new brewery or new distillery, and you're off and running again with money for your family for the next 10 generations, Now
they do that's some good ales right there too, and some good stouts.
Yeah.
There's tons of good, and I think to be honest, everybody was super concerned when it happened in beer that these big breweries were going to bastardize these craft products and we're going to turn them into something else. But that wasn't what happened. It was kind of the opposite. They were able to put more money and more infrastructure and expand their ability to make this product. And they kept the quality, for the most part, with most of these guys, they kept the quality on par. So it may not be, such a bad thing for the industry.
Very good point.
Yeah. See where it goes.
Anyway, so we're about halfway through here. Have you guys poured anything new to drink? We got any updates on what's in your glass?
I went over to some Doc 52 out of Memphis, and then I just poured a Russell's single barrel pick from out of California.
All this talk about Bell Mead made me want to pour.
Jason?
What's that? I said all this talk about Bell Mead wanted me to pour my my Bell Mead single cask cognac finish. I love this stuff.
Well, I moved on. One of the topics we were going to talk about what whiskey got us into the whiskey world, and so I've poured that one, but I haven't revealed it yet.
Well, then let's I'll tell you what I'm drinking, then we'll move into that topic. So right now, I moved on to a bottle of Rare Breed,
nice
Wild Turkey. And this guy, I mean, I have a lot of favorite whiskeys and whiskeys that I love, and this bottle is just fantastic. So this 116.8 proof, it's just such a great pour, and it's only gotten better over the last several months that I've had this bottle open. So I love Wild Turkey. I guess I'm a fanboy. But
what's the bottle code on the back of that baby?
this one is, let's see. Where's our code on this bottle? Let's see it.
I see it there, John.
Yeah.
It's right there,
You
dude.
got it. There's got
Yeah,
it.
look at it right there. If you look right there on the bottom, see right there. Oh, there it is. There it is.
We got LL. This one, I don't think is one of the older ones. This is LLGC.
Oh, GC. Okay.
So that's a little pre the older juice, but
Yeah.
definitely good stuff still.
Yeah. It,
So-
it doesn't matter the code. It's just awesome stuff, man.
It's just damn good whiskey. And
Yeah.
for a whiskey you can grab, I bought this bottle now. Granted, I can't get this by my house for this price, but I paid $35 for this bottle. I'd buy this by the case, no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, that's a case whiskey if you could.
So our next topic that we decided to talk about, as we wanted to talk about what was the whiskey that really not your first whiskey, or maybe it was, but what whiskey really converted you into being a whiskey geek? Like what just was the whiskey that turned you, or maybe there was a couple of them, but what really turns you into like, I gotta get more into this. I gotta buy, we've all probably got, and we don't want to admit it, but we've all probably got hundreds of bottles sitting around in our general vicinity. So what really pointed us in that direction?
I'll
Let's
start.
with, well, Scott wanted to do we'll put Scott last since he's got the big reveal in his glass. So why don't we start with Kyle?
So for me, it's probably a little different than other people. We were doing bottle shares, basically. We weren't calling it bottle shares back in like 2004-ish. And it was basically just a bunch of us that got together. And at that time, bourbon wasn't a big thing. You know what I mean? We're just go out and find bottles that we hadn't tried before and we didn't think other people had tried. And that was the whole name of the game. And someone brought a George T. Stagg. And
Wow, that's a bold one. That turned
yeah,
out.
it was like 146 or something proof, and I was just blown away by it didn't drink like that high of proof, you know what I mean? And that was kind of like the holy shit moment.
All right, I'm gonna put away my I'm gonna put away my Four Roses Yellow Label now. Just no, I'm only kidding. No, mine was and I wish I knew what batch it was. But for me, mine was a Booker's. It was the first time I had ever had something uncut, unfiltered, cask strength, that type of flavor profile. When the bartender gave this to me, because I was actually drinking Wild Turkey 101. It was just at the point where I started drinking Wild Turkey 101 straight and really, really enjoying it. And as good as that was, and as I started getting into that, the bartender was like, "Hey, have you ever had something like this?" And he was apparently a bourbon guy, so I'm like, "No, I've never even heard of it." So he poured me a small dram, and I took a sip, and I was like, "What the hell is that? I've never tasted anything like that." And ever since that moment, I started trying basically everything I could find, and that was the start.
So it's pretty much the same for you. It was just like someone took flavor and just punched you in the mouth with it.
Yeah, I had never, I thought Wild Turkey 101 was super flavorful, and it still is to me. But that Booker's, when I had it, when your palate's just not used to something like that, and you have it for the first time, I can only imagine what Stag must have tasted like for the first time. It just smacks you in the palate, and you're like, "What the hell?" Like I just didn't know a bourbon was that flavorful and that creamy on the. It was amazing. So that's what set me on my journey.
I'll go next. So for me, I was always into whiskey. I enjoyed whiskey, but I'd never gotten anything crazy. I'd always have a bottle of like Knob Creek up in the cabinet from Costco for $35 for the 1.75. And that was just kind of like, you'd have a couple beers, you drink a couple whiskeys, and that was my thing. I remember one time I walked into Total Wine. I was perusing the shelf, and this is, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. I mean, it was a while ago. And I was asking, one of the workers at the store came by, and I was asking them, what what can I try that's different, that'll give me a little bit different flavor, like just something different. I'm tired of drinking the same thing. And I'm gonna get crap for this, but I'm gonna tell you anyways, is that it was a store pick of Angel's Envy. And not that I think that Angel's Envy is a fantastic whiskey, but it really just kind of turned me on to the fact that whiskey could taste different and more flavorful and have like these different characters to it than just your standard Jim Beam or Knob Creek. That was kind of all this, there's obviously differences between distilleries, but they're all kind of this really generalized bourbons. And it just kind of showed me there was other flavors to explore. So that's kind of where it headed me off in a different direction of drinking more whiskey. So
yeah, I wouldn't give you shit for Angel's Envy. I mean, Angel's Envy, I know a few people that got into whiskey through Angel's Envy, but now Angel's Envy is way too sweet and not strong enough for them. So now they, drink other stuff. But yeah, as a gateway, I think, it's a great one.
And actually, that bottle of Angel's Envy was a Total Wine store pick, whatever that meant for them at the time. And so I've actually never had one I thought tasted as good, like that store selection or blend or whatever they tried to say that it was actually really good. And I've never had one that tasted that good since. But that was what really turned me. So, what you got, Scott? What's in the mystery glass?
All right, so my whiskey journey, and I go clear back to this one. I can't really tell you. I mean, there's been a few that have rocked my palate along the way, but I go back to the beginnings. And this is, I drank Jack and Coke. I drink Jim Beam and Coke. I drink Coors Light, Zima, whatever was out there.
Love that Zima.
Whiskey neat was always nasty. And my wife went on a girls' cruise. And she came home, she was all excited, and she said, I got a big bottle of scotch for your dad. It was really cheap on the ship. And I said, well, that's great. But I said, my dad doesn't drink scotch. From what I understand, it's kind of nasty shit. And she goes, well, I guess that's more for you then, because I got you a bottle too. And I go, well, I don't drink scotch. And she goes, you don't? Like, when have you ever seen me sitting around sipping on whiskey? But anyway, so since she bought it for me, I thought I'd try it. And I was like, that's pretty damn good. That bottle was Johnny Walker Black Label.
I was gonna guess Johnny Walker Black. I thought either that or maybe Macallan 12.
And I always have a bottle of it. It's what started my journey.
Yeah,
and I'm sipping it now, and it's pretty good for what it is. 40%. There's a nice sweetness to it, a little bit of peat. It's good.
What's the bottle that got you on your? I know you love peat too, but I know you're at heart you're a sherry guy. What was the bottle that got you really into sherried whiskeys?
Oh, sherried. Let me see. Probably Macallan 12, actually. Yeah. And we reviewed it earlier on. We need to do. It was probably like our 20th review. We did Macallan 12. It's a crappy review. We need to redo it, but and I've got a bottle of it up there. I keep it around all the time too. As far as peat goes, I can remember we did Lafroig 18, and I've got a bottle of it here as well, unopened because I had to go out and get my own bottle after Bart's. But I didn't like peat at the time, and I didn't even necessarily like it. And if you watch the review, and this was several years ago, I say, I don't like peated scotches, but I can tell that's a good one. I could just tell it was good.
Absolutely.
It just wasn't for me at the time. And so I think that kind of started opening my eyes, though, a little bit to peat and getting into those and trying those. And so now, I love peat as well, but it's still, I maybe go to peat 1 out of 10 nights. So most of the time, it's a sherried scotch is still my favorite profile.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like with scotch, sherry is the direction I like to go right now. I need to do more exploring, but sherry is really what does it for me at this point. So, all right, let's go on to our next topic. So actually, this topic came from someone commenting on one of my videos, and I apologize. I can't remember who left the comment. So if you see this video, take credit. I didn't come up with this topic, but it was an interesting topic, which was they're asking why do we nose whiskey? Why do we put so much emphasis on smelling a whiskey. And it's almost, we put as much emphasis on the nose as we do on the palate. So why do we do that? At the end of the day, most, intuitively, you'd think that it's mainly about what this whiskey tastes like, but we put so much on what the nose is like. So I'm curious to see what your guys' opinions on is like, why is the nose, at least in the review world, so important?
I would say it's not. We do it, we nose it, but it's a fraction of the overall experience. To me, 8/10, 4 out of 4/5, 80% of it is the taste. Yeah, and to me, because the nose can be completely different sometimes than what you get on the palate. So yeah, to me, I mean, me and Bart, we do it, we nose it, we give you those notes, but it all comes down to the palate. If you ask me, I mean, what are you getting? How's it start? How's it finish? What's it packing? The nose to me factors in very little.
Yeah, I would agree. I do love it to nose a good whiskey, but that's generally just to explore different flavors you're picking up and different scents. Because another thing that Scott said that really rings true is a nose can taste completely different than the palate. You may get butterscotch and sherry and sweetness and dark fruits on the nose, but you taste it, and it could be a one-note palate whiskey. You never know. The nose could be better than the palate. So I think nosing it is more of an exploratory type of ritual that you do when you just got a new glass of whiskey, see what kind of flavors. I will say, though, when I find a nose that's complex and I taste it and the palate is equally as complex and and you're picking up some of those notes that you got on the nose, I think it makes the experience that much more, just that much more enjoyable.
I agree 100%. When you first asked that question, I was like, I don't have a good answer for that because, and then Scott nailed it. I mean, in reality, it's not that important. Do I like to? Oh yeah. I think it smells delicious most of the time. We just recorded an episode though, where the nose was phenomenal. The taste was shit. And,
1792.
I can drink a whiskey if it doesn't nose well, but I can't drink one if it's like, if the nose is really good and the palate sucks, then there's not even a point in drinking it.
Yeah, I thought it was just a really interesting topic when the person brought it up, because I was like, well, I don't really have a great answer for that. And what's funny is we all give nosing notes. When we all do reviews, everybody gives a note on the nose.
Because if you don't, someone's going to be like, why didn't you say what it noses like?
Yeah. But it's just a weird phenomenon. Like, how did we get there? Why did we get there? It's funny. But like you guys say, and I think to some extent the nose is important in the sense that somebody commented, I think it might have been Rare Bird, said that the nose sets the tone. And I really feel like I don't know scientifically how it plays into it, but I really feel like it's a superior whiskey if the nose really leads you into the palate. Like, when the nose is so vastly different from the palate, and especially obviously if the nose is so much better than the palate, obviously it's negative. But if the nose doesn't smell like what you get on the palate, a lot of times you're disappointed. So I think it really is a positive point for a whiskey when you get a nice complex nose with some beautiful notes on it, and those notes match up to what you get on the palate. I think that's a plus. So I do think it's like an important aspect of the whiskey. While it's not supremely important, I do think it's just another piece of the puzzle to kind of lead you into if this is a really good whiskey or if it isn't. So that's kind of my take on it at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's bourbons and scotches that I could just smell and nose for, hours just because it smells so good. And I've had picks that literally, I had a Russell's Reserve pick that literally smelled like carrot cake. It was unbelievable in the glass, and I could just sit there and nose it for hours. And then when I tasted it all those same flavors kind of came through. Amazing. But I think even now, more to the point, with all these new distilleries, I think it's even more important to smell your whiskey, because you when you get used to it and you start smelling different things, you can nose and you could smell a younger whiskey now. You could smell that there's some youth to it. You could pick up different flavors when you nose a whiskey to, that will kind of set the tone for it. The Rare Bird brought it up, setting the tone for it, and kind of maybe setting your mind up for what you're about to taste. If it is young and it doesn't really taste so good, hopefully it's wrong and the palate proves you wrong. But at the same time, it can give you some really amazing clues to what you're about to taste. So, Yeah, it is about the palate, but I think the nose can be important in setting up kind of the overall mindset you get into, and part of the experience overall when you nose and taste a whiskey.
I would say you're onto something there, because, and I have no basis for this whatsoever, but I would like to think that like part of it comes down from like master distillers and distilleries. You know what I mean? They can immediately smell it and tell you if something is off with it. You know what I mean? Like if it smells wrong, then it probably is wrong. You know what I mean? Like regardless of the palate, like if it doesn't smell good, then if it smells like mold or something, then there's probably some mold in there. So
yeah, I could. And Rare Bird also made a good point, not just setting the tone. He said every time you sip the glass, it comes to your nose.
Even to a more extreme extent, the master distillers often talk about the fact that they can walk into a distillery or their distillery and smell if they're like too deep into the tails of the whiskey, or like, they can just smell by the aroma in the air where they are in this whiskey, if they need to stop distilling or whatever the case may be. Like there's a lot that goes into the nose. So I think it's important. But I brought up jokingly a little bit ago 1792, and I think it's a great example in that I think 1792 smells absolutely fantastic. And the problem is it's setting you up for disappointment, because on the end of the day, that whiskey on the palate does not taste anywhere near as good as it smells.
I would also say the same thing for Jefferson's. Jefferson's to me smells way better than it tastes. I don't know what it is. It's got a really nice nose, really nice bourbon, caramels, vanillas, all those bourbon notes and love. But on the palate, it just loses something for me with Jefferson's. I'm not really sure what it is. It just, me and Jefferson's just don't jive. But at Barton, if you've ever gone to Barton and had the new make on the tours, the new make is like, it's like sipping pure buttered popcorn. It's delicious. So I'm like, why doesn't your bourbon taste like this?
All right, I think we can probably move on into our last topic, which is open bottles. Now, this topic is going to be probably a little bit contested by some, but what we want to do is we're all going to reveal how many open bottles of whiskey we have, approximately. I'm sure nobody counted. Well, I think Scott really counted, but we're going to reveal how many open bottles of whiskey we have, and is there a number that's just too many? Like, you got to stop when you hit a certain number. So I'd love to hear everybody's opinion. So I'll start with myself. I'm probably have the lowest out of the bunch. I believe I counted that I have 72 open bottles of whiskey. And for me, I feel like that is close to the right amount where I'm able to keep up with drinking the whiskey, and I don't have too many bottles turning bad on me. So I don't know that I'd want to go too much higher than that. But maybe the 100 mark is the cap. I don't know. But
you gotta pump those numbers. Those are rookie numbers.
Hey, I got a lot of friends who drink my whiskey, so it's helpful. But
we need more people to come over here and drink Kyle's whiskey.
I tried. We weren't too successful with clearing the shelves, though.
You drank too
Let's move
slow.
on to Kyle. Kyle, what do you got?
About between 140 and 150
He's lying.
that are open.
He's
How
lying.
many open bottles?
Do you want me to go count them?
Not
I'm
really.
Sure we have like 200.
Aaron, do it.
Yeah,
So
dude.
it's funny because I've met Aaron, and she's a pretty, you're pretty tiny, but right now in the camera, you look like you're looming over Kyle. Like, you're wrong.
I heard John say, how many open bottles do you have? And I'm like, oh, I'm coming in on this one because Kyle's going to say that he only has like 120.
I would love to see Kyle's approximation versus your count. I would love to see that.
2, 4, 6. Hold on.
We'll let everybody else go. It's going to take a while, I'm sure.
Open bottles.
In the office, how many open bottles?
I'd say I get when we were talking before the show, I guessed at 300. So I counted, and I had right around 290. So I was pretty close. The only bottle I know, the dispute is whiskey. Does whiskey go bad? Do you need to gas it? Can you leave it open? There's a lot of variables. What's the ABV? How full is the bottle? I can tell you, there's one bottle that I've had that I've noticed a difference in. And it was quick. It was within the first 6 months. And it's Woodford Reserve Rye.
Oh,
this thing.
God. You're so right. Absolutely.
This thing went bitter and oaky and just stale quick. and I just took a little sip before the show, and I couldn't get the taste out of my mouth. But yeah, so sitting at 290. Some of them are 4.5 years old now that have been opened. I sit down here. I'm not afraid to come in and go into any of them and pour them and have a dram. So.
And then before we get to Jason, any of you guys out there in the chat watching the live stream, tag me on it, put at Blind Whiskey Reviews and put your number on there. I'll shout you out, and I'd love to see what everybody's numbers are. I see a few in here. We've got Cooper 57M says he's got 10. West Jolly says he's got 100. So I'd love to hear what some of your other guys' numbers are. So Jason, what do you got?
Oh, dear Lord. I'm trying to count right now. I would say,
let's go back. While Jason's counting, let's go back to it a little bit. So, do you guys think, Kyle and Scott, do you think there's a number? I mean, if you had a relatively accurate count, do you think there's a number where it's like, I got to stop? Like, I got to start emptying these bottles. I cannot keep opening more bottles.
I'm there right now. Like, I honestly think where you're at, like 75 to 100 would be plenty to keep track of.
No.
I honestly think whiskey goes bad after, usually after a couple years or something of being open. Usually when my bottles get down to like a third or so, I really try and that's not really acceptable to me. So I'm going to have to kill this in the next probably month or so, just because.
Or tonight, whatever.
Hey, don't judge.
All right. So I'm up to about maybe almost 400 bottles now. And I think I have about 200 open.
Woo! That's a good number.
Yeah. I think I have I would say in the ballpark about 200. I have some that I just kind of have bunkered and some that, kind of more collector's bottles, but most of them are open.
I think we all have some.
Like 200 for you is too many. Is 200 like where you have bottles that are turning on you and you need to get through them?
I've only had that a couple times, and actually it's crazy that Scott brought out that Woodford one. The Woodford malt whiskey that I tried. They released a malt whiskey, the Blue Label one.
I got that one.
Yeah, that one turned on me.
Really?
That one I kind of enjoyed a little bit when I first opened it. Once it got halfway, it got really weird.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, check it out. It got real funky on me. I don't know. I mean, some of them. What I do, it's not a matter of taste for me. It's a matter of where it is in the bottle. So if I have about a third left in the bottle, I make a point to try to kill it rather than hold on to it. But I also like to, I have people come over and I like to share all the whiskey and hopefully they drink it because I'm not going to be able to drink all this. I'll have no liver left.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you. I mean, you got to have friends in this business, especially when you're reviewing whiskeys. It's like you're forced to open. Like for me, I put out a new bottle review every week. So I'm forced to open a bottle every week, and I certainly do not drink a bottle every week. So this is kind of an endless cycle where I got to get other people to help me drink this stuff. But
one thing that has happened, I don't know if it's happened to you guys. It's one thing, I know we do reviews and we get bottles. I have been more selective in what I buy and what I want to review than just going to the liquor store and buying everything I see like I did when I first started.
Yeah.
Definitely in the same boat.
Yeah.
So who had the highest number of bottles open?
Oh, Scott did for sure.
Scott by far, yeah. 290
Scott
I think was his number.
Yeah, Scott by far.
Well, yeah, you have a big show too. Kyle's got 185-ish.
He
So
wasn't
Kyle,
too
you
far
were
off.
only
He said
off by like
150.
25%. That's reasonable. It's a reasonable margin of error, right?
That is.
So Kyle and I are about in the same ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah, let me shout out a few of the people that commented here on how many they've got open. So Justin Ayers has got 15. Christopher David's got 250. Michael L's got 27. Moose 76 has 165. Brent Ross has 40 bottles, 30 open. Rare Bird's got 125 open.
Woo!
Nice.
Let's see. Dark Meat
He
Chicken.
also said 90%. It's 90% wild turkey, which makes sense.
Dark Meat Chicken's got 9 open. Bourbon Professor's got 106 open. Chad Wallace has 27. So, and like I said, I feel for me, like I'm at a decent number, right? If I maintain that, I'd be okay with it. in my limited experience with Scotch, and I was talking with Scott a little bit about this before the stream, but I really feel like Scotch tends to hold up a little bit better to air than maybe bourbon does. And I'm curious to hear if you guys feel the same. I mean, maybe I know Kyle doesn't drink a ton of Scotch, but Jason, what's your opinion? Do you think Scotch holds up a little bit better to some airtime than bourbon might?
I don't know what Scott's take on it, but for me, I feel like Scotch gets better with a little air in it. At least most of the ones that I've had.
Scott would be the expert on that.
Yeah, Scott would be the expert on it though.
Well, yeah, 4 to 5 year expert, I guess you would say. Now, even like the bourbons though that I've got, that Woodford Reserve is the only one that I've noticed any difference. Scotches get better with air, but I think bourbons do too. I've had a lot of different, bottles of bourbon. You try them at first and you go back to them later, and it's different, better.
Yeah, definitely. Usually, I've only had a few bottles that actually went the other way.
Yeah, that's the same thing I say. That's probably only a handful of bottles that,
especially when you first open them.
Yeah. A neck pour is no way to judge a whiskey.
So let me ask you guys this, since you're on the topic. Without throwing out numbers, is it probably fair to say that we all have enough whiskey to last us a lifetime that we'd never have to buy another bottle in our lives?
Absolutely not.
I was going to say a lifetime.
Probably. So Scott's closer to that number than we are.
like from where we are now to the rest of our lives, or like if we started at 21 and then went on.
From now on, I would say 10 to 15 years, probably.
Yeah, I could probably go through this pretty fast. I would probably need a good 200 more bottles.
So you're saying you could probably go 10 to 15 years on what you have?
Yeah, I would think so. At least.
You're saying 10 to 15 years, 200 more bottles is only getting you another, at best, 7.5 years. So unless you anticipate dying in the next 20, you're going to need more than that, my friend.
Well,
that is true. That is true. And how many of these are halfway or less, half full or less? So yeah.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, between the four of us, there's more than enough whiskey for each of us. But yet, you still go into a store every week or every other week or a couple times a week, and you're like, "Oh, I got to have that one," and you end up buying it because you don't have it.
Oh,
This
no,
is
I'm
true.
buying.
I mean, for me, lately I've found store picks problematic. I keep buying these like 14 and 15-year-old Knob Creeks or the Russell's picks or the Four Roses picks. Like I keep just buying. And I think Kyle is a great example of this as a man who has, 100 bottles of Four Roses, is that these store picks are problematic. They're all so different and many of them so good. It's hard to resist when you find one and you find it from a reputable store or a store with a good price, or it's hard to say no.
Well, and the only problem as far as what we do in YouTube, store picks aren't good for that. I mean, I need the regular release Buffalo Trace to review. So because more people are looking for that than they're looking for the Auburn Spirit single barrel, Buffalo Trace.
Oh no, store picks are for me, not for you guys.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you want a good whiskey, at a great price, to pour off camera, when you're sitting around watching a movie, by all means. But yeah, as far as what I call return on investment, and what we're going to get out of YouTube, store picks aren't there. I mean, they're not going to bring that. But
No, not at all. Totally agree.
Yeah.
So here's what I was thinking. I was just thinking this though, when you're talking about if this had to last me 10 years, would you drink? And so you're all in the same shoes. Would you drink your worst whiskey first, or would you save it for last?
I'm a best whiskey for last kind of guy, or best anything last kind of guy. So yeah, definitely worst first, best last.
Same thing on the dinner plate. Like, you got to finish the worst stuff first. That way you can enjoy and finish your meal on a high note.
Yeah, eat your peas, then go to your steak.
That's right.
Jason, what are you doing? Worst whiskey first or the best whiskey first?
I'm just going by mood, really. If you know, but I would probably lean toward having. I don't know. I would probably say I probably want to drink the good stuff first.
That's what I do in case I die in 5 years. Then I've drank the good.
That's what I mean. You want to get the good stuff first. Who knows if I'm if I'm gonna drop dead at some point? I'm sure as hell not drinking Jim Beam White Label. I'm going for the George T. Stagg, baby.
Well, that's the beauty of whiskey, right? Because if this was beer, you got to kill the whole bottle of beer in one sitting. You can't wait. But with whiskey, you can have a little bit here, a little bit there. You can dabble all through. You don't have to make that decision to commit to one bottle first or last. You could just spread it out. Or you could blend that shitty bottle of Jim Beam with whatever you want.
Hey, there you go, John. See, that's what I would do. I would drink all the good stuff, then blend all the bad stuff together and make something.
So how many? I can tell you, I have 2 bottles that I just cringe at. I won't say what they are, but so I mean, out of 400 bottles, 2 that really I turned my nose up to, and I've contemplated pouring out, but I can't because it's whiskey. I mean, how many bottles do you guys have that are bad I mean, that are just terrible? You know,
I have.
Go ahead, Jason.
I said I have 4 that I know of that I would use as a toilet cleaner rather than drink it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have 2 to 4 that it's no secret. Like Willet Pot Still for me is one of them, and I just don't touch it. I don't. If people want to come over and drink it, then they're more than welcome. Just like anything else on the bar. If there's a couple other ones that I'll give away if I'm not a huge fan of them, and if I just straight up don't like it. One of them that I've hung on to is the Angel's Envy Rye. I don't like it because it's too sweet for me, but I know a lot of other people like it, so I keep it on hand. I think it tastes like toasted marshmallows, but
it does. It totally smells and tastes like toasted marshmallows,
right? And like I love marshmallows. Don't get me wrong. I'm fat. I love marshmallows, but I don't want my whiskey tasting like that. So it's to me like. I understand it's a good bottle. It doesn't fit my flavor profile, so I keep it on hand to let other people try it. Some other things I've had, like Creek Water, which was disgusting. Some dude at the Bourbon Society really liked it, and I just let him take home the bottle. And
I just tried a whiskey last week on my live stream that I couldn't even stomach it. It was the Jephthah Creeds, the new one. I couldn't even. That's one of the 4. I couldn't even handle it. People were cracking up on my reaction to it. It was just, it's awful. So
there were some comments, but mine are both bourbons, both Americas, both bourbons, craft distillers, and they were pushed out either way too soon or just the bad stuff from the beginning.
I mean, I can tell you from my experience, the worst whiskeys I've had, and I've reviewed them, and I'm not going to call them out on the channel because I'm not trying to trash anybody. I just put one out, though. So if you really want to find out one whiskey I thought was subpar, you can go check out my channel, look at the last review I put out. But they've been the whiskeys I've been sent by craft distilleries that are putting out young whiskey. I still have some of them. I give them to people to try, and everybody's just like, these are abhorrent, disgusting. They taste like crap. Why would anybody release this? Like it's always been these young craft whiskeys.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about that before, you know what I mean? Like they got to make money in the meantime, but it's like, guys, make some vodka, make some gin, go source whiskey. You know what I mean? Like do something, but don't put out crap, because then you're going to put a bad taste in people's mouth and they're going to write you off for the next 5 or 10 years. And you may not be around for the next 10 years to see that.
Yeah, we have a craft distillery here in Columbus. We have a few of them, but one of them that I think did things smart was this one called High Bank, where they kind of played it smart. They made a vodka, they made a gin, they made all stuff that you don't have to age very long first to kind of get the revenue in, and they let their bourbon and their whiskey age for a few years. And even though it's not the most complex thing in the world, it's definitely better than some of the other stuff that I've had that's only 2 years old. So.
And there's a lot you can do with gin to give it unique flavors and like make it a nice craft gin that is at least interesting enough that people will want to purchase it. Like it'll give you a few dollars coming in the meantime. Like do not, if you need anyone that's thinking about or starting a distillery happens to listen to this, do not put out a young whiskey. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
So, speaking of gin, earlier off camera, we were talking about Barrels and Brews, and they just put out a gin that was aged in used bourbon barrels for 6 years, and it came in at like 156 proof in the bottle.
156?
Yeah.
Guys, I have gasoline? Jesus.
It's almost Everclear level, right?
Yeah.
I got to taste some though. It was pretty good. I mean, it was unique. It was still gin, but it didn't taste like you were chewing on a pine tree. So that was a plus.
All right. So it looks like we've blown our hour over a little bit. So I saw a comment earlier from Richie Z, and he asked, now that we're halfway through 2019, and this is a good place to end the live stream, I think. What's everyone's favorite bottle that was released this year so far? Like, what's your favorite release of 2019?
I guess
Kyle.
store picks are off the table.
Store picks are off the table. What's your favorite standard release whiskey?
Damn it, Kyle, and your store picks.
I don't know. I got some good Four Roses and Russell store picks. Honestly, I don't know off the top of my head. Go to someone else. Let me think about it.
Jason, what do you got?
Let me see.
All right, I'll go.
Yeah, you
Let's
go.
hear it,
You go.
John.
You
Let's
go
hear
first.
it.
I think
you go.
I've had a couple that I really like this year. Value-wise, I have a problem with it, but I'm gonna say one of them for me is actually what I started with drinking tonight, which is the Old Forester Rye. I mean, I think, is it the best whiskey I've tried this year? No, it's not that. But for the price, the value, the availability, the proof, I mean, I think it really just kind of hits a lot of the marks. So for me, is it the best whiskey I've tried? No, but I think it's definitely a damn good whiskey that was released this year that I've really been enjoying. So I'll put that one up there. I've got another one, but I don't want to steal two. So,
I would say as far as price, flavor, availability, I think my favorite has been the Four Roses Small Batch Select.
yeah, that was my other one too.
When it comes to value and what you get in this bottle, I absolutely love this stuff. I think it's absolutely delicious. If I'm not going for value and if I'm just going for sheer flavor and whatever, just throw money out the window, it's the Foregate Whiskey Company. This thing is an absolute flavor bomb, and I'm in love with this stuff. It's Kentucky straight bourbon finished in sherry / rum casks, and it's absolutely delicious. So those are
back off what Jason said. That the Small Batch Select is really good. I enjoy it immensely. I mean, y'all knows I'm a Four Roses whore. So,
although that new Peerless release, that Peerless 4-year was very surprising and probably one of the best bourbon, one of the best new bourbons I've tried this year too.
I was going to say also the WB Saffel.
Oh hell yeah, that's a good call out too.
Yeah,
I think both of those whiskeys though have pricing problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Foregate's $200. I mean, it's
Yeah.
an expensive bourbon. It's an expensive whiskey. But like I said, if I'm not putting price into the factor, then Foregate is there. But I realize that's very much out of the price range for a lot of people. But the Four Roses Small Batch Select, for what you're getting for about $60, it's totally worth it, and it's delicious stuff.
What about you, Scott? What do you got?
Scotch. Let's go with Compass Box, Tobias and the Angel.
Yeah, you were really evangelizing about that whiskey. That's good stuff, huh?
That is a good one. Yeah. I got an Irish whiskey that really impressed me, and that's Red Spot. It's a 15-year. Bourbons, America's whiskeys. Iron Root still just leads the way. Some you guys have had some that I haven't been able to get, so I can't comment on some of those. But I do have that WB Saffel. It was really good.
Yeah. The Iron Root's a good call out too. I was able to review that. That's a delicious Texas whiskey. Probably one of the best I've had between the Balcones French oak one as well. Those are my two favorites I've had.
Yeah, and then the Westland Peat Week really surprised me. I was really impressed with it for America.
Yeah, I would actually agree, Scott. That red spot was really good. It got very sweet, but that was a good Irish whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah, it really surprised me. Really impressed me from the first sip.
As far as the Scotch goes, I think the favorite one that I tried this year, I got to really dabble in Octomore this year, which I freaking loved. And also, Scott, I'll thank you. That Bunnahabhain 18 is probably still the best Scotch I've had.
Oh yeah.
I love that stuff. But I know that's not really a new release. That's been around for a while.
Wait till you try that the sample of the Amontillado cask from the distillery. If you haven't.
Oh, I already have, and it's glorious. I actually might like that better than the 18. It's amazing. It's amazing.
All right, everybody. Well, we're 15 minutes over the hour, so let's wrap this thing up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I appreciate everyone showing up and commenting. It's been a great night, a lot of good conversation. So let's let everybody wrap it up. We'll start with Kyle. Kyle, you want to say goodbye to everybody and tell them where to find you?
See everyone. Again, Kyle, Bourbon Blind, Bourbon Blind Nation on Facebook, Bourbon Blind on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of good stuff. One last little minor note. I found a small new love in my life, and it's a 25-year Armagnac. It's actually from Elixir Spirits. He's in the chat right now, but man, it's good.
All right, Jason, what do you want us to wrap it up? Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, find me at the Mash and Drum on YouTube. You could also find me at the Mash and Drum on Instagram, and you could also find me at Mash and D on Twitter. Yep, reach out to me, and if you guys haven't yet, join me on my live streams usually every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thanks again.
Scott, you want to tell everybody where to find you?
On YouTube, Scotch Test Dummies. On Instagram, we are at Scotch Test Dummy with an I, and the real Scotch Test Dummies on Instagram. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Great time. Thanks, John, for hosting all of us.
No, not a problem, guys. Loved it. As always, you can find me on Blind Whiskey Reviews on YouTube, which is where you're at right now. And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at blind_reviews. Hopefully next month, Scott from My Bourbon Journey and Bobby from Adventures in Whiskey will be back with us. And I believe we'll be streaming this next month at the tail end of actually this month. I think we talked about potentially like the 30th of the month. We'll be streaming on Bobby's channel, Adventures in Whiskey. So definitely make sure to check that out when you see it coming through your stream, and then subscribe to Bobby's channel so you know when we're popping up. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Cilantro.